Hi, I'm Gary, welcome to my channel and welcome back if you've been here before. Today is Combo Day on the Kit of the Week, and that means we're looking at the FM-2 Wildcat in 1/72nd scale from Arma Hobby. We'll be having a look at the history of the Wildcat itself. We'll have a look at the history of the kit, its competition and what you get in the box for your money. And of course then I'll show you how I built my one. All these bits come as chapters so you can flick backwards and forwards as your heart desires. Now if you enjoy the video, and I hope you do, please do remember to let me know by clicking the thumbs up button down here, and also by making sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already by clicking the small logo down there in the bottom right corner, which doesn't cost you a penny but helps me enormously. And if you want to make a more concrete contribution to supporting the channel, you can do that through super thanks down here, or of course you can go through many of my online partners such as Ko-fi, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon, or of course you can visit the Gary Stuff merchandise store where you can buy a special gift for yourself or that very special Gary in your life. Anyway, enough of all of that. Let's make a start by looking at the history of the Grumman FM-2 Wildcat. With its bulky fuselage and squat hand-cranked undercarriage, the Grumman F4F Wildcat carrier-based fighter served in the US Navy and Marine Corps and the British Fleet Air Arm for most of the Second World War. The Wildcat derived its heritage from Grumman's biplane fighters, such as the two-seat FF and the single-seat F2F and F3F. By the mid-1930s, the US Navy was looking for a new monoplane fighter, initially favouring the Brewster F2A, also called the Buffalo. However, the US Navy issued an order to Grumman for its design, the F4F2, just in case. Now this was proved inferior in some respects to the Buffalo, so Grumman completely rebuilt the prototype as the XF4F3 with the huge Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp radial engine and new wings. This new aircraft was ordered in bulk. The Wildcat first entered service with the Royal Navy, where it was known as the Martlet. In the early years of the war it performed superbly, earning praise from legendary test pilot Eric Winkelbrown, who flew them on combat missions. Their compact size, low landing speed and unique wing folding system meant they were ideal for smaller ships such as escort carriers. The first kill by a Martlet was on Christmas Day 1940, when an aircraft based in the Orkneys shot down a German Junkers Ju-88 bomber. After the USA entered the war in 1941, the Wildcat was used extensively in carrier-based operations in the Pacific Theatre. Its rugged undercarriage was designed for the US method of carrier landings, although even that couldn't save every pilot's blushes. In the early days of the war, the Wildcat fell foul of the superb Japanese Zero fighter, but improved tactics soon turned this around, and the Wildcat's ability to absorb amazing amounts of combat damage was invaluable. Some 7,860 Wildcats were built, and around 20 of these are still airworthy, including this Martlet 1, with a similar number on display in museums. This box of the Arma Hobby Wildcat was a new tool as recently as 2020, as an expert set with pre-cut canopy masks and some photo etch details. As Arma Hobby tends to do, it followed up that release with many more, firstly with new decals as in this Wildcat Mark 6 of the Fleet Air Arm, this late Pacific Theatre set, and this set of training aircraft, the latter in 2021. Also in 2021 came the F4F4 Wildcat with new parts and new decals, with another set in 2022. There's even a double set of an FM1 and an FM2 Wildcat, which comes with two sections of carrier flight deck for display. In 1/72nd scale there is plenty of competition available. Airfix made their new tool of the F4F4 in 2015, which includes a folded wing option. It's been released in dogfight doubles, first with the Nakajima Kate in 2015, then with the Mitsubishi Zero in 2020, and there is a new set of decals in this 2022 solo re-release. The previous Airfix offering was a new tool in 1964. AZ made a new tool of the Martlet 1 in 2010 with boxings in 2021 for the Martlet and the G36, essentially the original Wildcat. This tooling also made its way to market under the Admiral brand with added resin parts as the F4F3 and the F4F3P, both in 2012. Hobby Boss has released the Wildcat in their Easy Build range, with the wing and lower fuselage as one piece, mating to a single piece upper fuselage and fin, available in 3 versions. And if you look around, you can find plenty of others, notably one of the many boxings of the Hasegawa kit that derives from a 1994 tooling, and the Revel offering, which dates all the way back to 1961. So here we have the box, all very neat and tidy, very nice piece of box art at the front, and it opens at one end to reveal a cellophane bag with everything in it, all nicely packaged up. Inside we have transparencies, we have the photo etch and the paint masks, we have 2 sprues of grey plastic, and we have the instruction leaflet, and in the middle of that is the decal sheet for the 6 decal options. We'll have a look at all of this stuff in a bit more detail. The smaller of the 2 sprues is sprue A. This has the cockpit structure and the tailplane and elevators, wheels, fuel tanks, and so on. Oh, and the very spindly undercarriage. That's been a major problem on other kits. We'll see later how well they've dealt with it here. Which means sprue B has pretty much everything else: fuselage, wings, engine, propeller, rudder, and the rockets. There's 6 rockets you can fit to this aircraft. The transparencies are on this last sprue, I guess sprue C really. All the transparencies look really well moulded and very clean, very crisp. There's lots and lots of panes of glass on this. Fortunately, we have a pre-cut mask in this set. There's 2 little windows that go down in the bottom sort of forward quarter, I guess you'd call it. And I imagine this is a light cover as well. Then we have this very teeny tiny piece of photo etch. How small? Well, let's have a look. There's my pencil, you can see. So, instrument panel here. These are wiring looms for the engines, pulleys for the undercarriage system, and belts for the pilots. All very small, but very, very highly detailed. There's also this very helpful sheet of pre-cut parts for the masking. I hope you can see some of the cuts there. So on the left hand side we have all the cockpit canopy masks, and then on the right are the masks for the wheels. The instruction leaflet of course comes first of all with all the bits and pieces. My apology, the clear parts are frame T. I thought it'd be C. Call outs for the colours with various options. Hataka, aka Lifeguard Ammo, Humbrol, Vallejo, Tamiya. Of course, I normally use Vallejo, so it's really helpful to know all of those. The masks and where they go, very good indeed. Arma Hobby instructions are very, very, very good, I find. Very clear, very concise. This is the bit I'm not looking forward to very much, which is the undercarriage. As you can see, it's quite a complicated beast, but we'll worry about that another day. There's not an awful lot to do, apart from the undercarriage. There really isn't an awful lot to do. The cockpit's fairly straightforward, and there's some weaponry underneath. On Oddly, on this first page of stencils and colourings, there's no text, which is a bit odd because that's not very helpful if you're trying to put those tiny stencils in. I guess you can maybe look at these. I think you see S15 here in black. I think that's also an S15 in white. So you just swap them over if you're doing the stencils. 6 marking schemes altogether, 5 for the United States and 1 for the Fleet Air Arm. I haven't yet decided which I'm going to make. And here's the stencil sheet. These are all printed by TechMod, so very, very nice indeed. In fact, yes, you can see here the stencil 4, for example, in black is also stencil 4 in white. So even though they don't actually call out which is which, you can just cross-reference it to a black stencil and your white stencil will be in the same place. Other things, there's a bit of slipping here, a bit of sliding of the colour, which is not very good. These are probably not dried terribly well in the process, but otherwise, you know, the colours are absolutely lovely. The printing here is very crisp indeed. The instrument panel and all that is very nice. These colours are very good. Registration's excellent. So they're lovely, lovely decals apart from this tiny little problem here. And here you can see I've really pushed up the zoom on this just to try and get a look at how clean the stencils are. There's the end of my pencil, so you can see these are very crisp prints for a very small stencils. Then if we look at the plastic itself, it's actually pretty good. There's really just the tiniest amount of flash on some parts, but really nothing to be too upset about. The panel lines are, well, they're shallower than Airfix, but deeper than other companies, so we might well be able to get some really nice weathering and panel lines out of these without too much trouble. The problem here is going to be the join, the fuselage join here. There's a lot of panel lines that cross over the fuselage join, top and bottom, so we may have to be really careful about how we do that. Otherwise, it all looks pretty clean and pretty nice. I mean, I didn't have any problems with the Hurricanes I've made from Arma Hobby in 1/72, so I'm hoping I won't have any problems with this either. Again, on the other sprue, really nothing to write home about in terms of, there's a bit of flash here on these undercarriage legs, or struts for the undercarriage, but the rest of the gear is very clean. So just a bit of a problem with the mould there, I suspect. The instrument panel is quite nicely moulded. Now I'm going to be using the one supplied in the photo etch, so I'll be taking down all of the detail there. But if you wanted to do it yourself and do some dry brushing, there's enough relief, I suspect, to just about be able to pick out those bezels without too much issue. The rest of the structure all looks very nice, all very clean. The plastic looks a little shiny, but very smooth, which is probably why it looks shiny. And it feels like a harder plastic. I don't know if you get the same thing. Sometimes you pick up plastic and think, oh, this is a bit soft, and sometimes you think like Bandai plastic is hard as nails. It's incredibly hard, very crisp. Maybe it's more difficult to mold, I don't know. I'm sure someone would better tell me. But generally speaking, this feels like quite hard plastic, so I suspect it will therefore take a lot more of this moulding detail than the average plastic will. But we will see as we go along. Starting with the seat, and there's some photo etch to go in. I use a grease pencil to pick up the smaller pieces, like this seat pan, and place them on a dab of super glue. Next, I'll attach the seat belts. Super glue again here, one on each side, and these shoulder straps on top. When they're set, I can push them into place. Once more, a dab of super glue will hold them. I'm using the photo etch instrument panel, so I've got to sand off the raised plastic here. Then I can drop the new panel into place. Now I use a high viscosity super glue for this, as it gives me a few moments to check the placement before pressing down to set. Back to the seat, and I'm going to paint the straps. Now the instructions suggest you can drape the supplied decals over them, but I'm not confident that will work out well. Anyway, I prefer this colour. Then I can add a few dabs of steel for the buckles. The instrument panel is black at the top, with sides in the US interior green of the cockpit. The seat support is green with the black headrest painted in. The completed seat just slots into place. On the instrument panel I use some decal setting solution, then place the instrument decals. They look really good. Then this box, maybe fuses, sits on the instrument panel frame. Then the rudder bar assembly goes on the back. To assemble the cockpit hub, I've painted and added a wash to the base. The instrument panel goes into the front and the seat support goes into the back. Then the control column can sit in place. There are some small side panels as well. Each has photo etch to be fitted and painted, as well as some more decals. When they're complete, the side panels can go in between the two frames of the cockpit. And when they're all together, the cockpit actually looks pretty good, especially for this scale. So the next piece to prepare is the forward bulkhead. This is painted in the lower surface colour, here Sky Type S, and a detail wash applied. You can probably guess the scheme I've gone for now. Onto this bulkhead go the gear chains for the undercarriage. It may be controversial, but you might not want to care about this, as you'll be hard pressed to see them later. If you do it though, it does look good out here in the open. This bulkhead is the first thing to go into the fuselage half. It's very easy to locate. Then the cockpit tub goes in neatly behind. We need to add parts of the main gear too. These two frames meet up inside the bay. And when those are in place, the fuselage halves can go together. Now, I found the fit a little tight, but it wasn't too bad with a bit of fiddling around. Tape and clamps keep it together while it sets. Now while that's drying, I'll assemble the engine. First, the cylinders go onto the rear firewall. Then there's this ring of, I'm guessing, maybe connecting rods. On mine, one of them was missing, so I added a little bit of round stock to replace it. When it's all painted over, you never know. There are these filters for the air inlets that come with the photo etch sheet, 4 in total. Then there's this loom to go in on each side. I glue the centre into place first before messing around, trying to get the leads into the right places. It's a faff to get it just right. The engine cover comes in 2 halves, and there is the engine fairing at the front, which holds it all in place very neatly. Onto the wings now, and if you're fitting rockets to the aircraft, you need to drill out the mounting holes. I'm using a 0.8mm drill bit here. Then the wing halves can go together. These are a very good fit indeed. Next, the engine can go onto the nose. The bulkhead just slips into place, and the engine cover goes on top of that. Again, it's all quite a good fit. Now the wings just slot into place. You might need to clean up the tabs if you've used primer first, like I did, but the fit is good and the dihedral of the wing sits quite naturally. There was only a really small gap to fill in later. The one-piece tailplane, or horizontal stabiliser, slides into place, followed by the elevator. Then the rudder goes on the back and locks everything in place. And that essentially is the main part of the build done. So I can start painting, and I've primed the aircraft first in light grey, then I'm applying Sky Type S on the underside. And while that's drying, I'll mask off the canopy. The pre-cut parts are easy to locate. I cover the inside of the canopy with tape, then blue tack to hold it in place. When they're masked, I give the transparency some black first as an interior colour. And while I've got the black out, I'll also prime the propeller. Now when the sky coat is dry and it's been given a light satin varnish, I can mask off the underside and spray on some dark slate grey to the top. And while that's drying, I'll paint things like the wheels using tyre black. Now these gear struts need some cleaning. I'm going to use a flat toothpick that's got a bit of sandpaper on it for most of it, and I'll trim the rest with a very sharp fresh blade. Then with these slate grey dry, I can mask off the camouflage pattern and spray the rest with extra dark sea grey. I'll also spray the canopy in EDSG, as that's where they appear on the scheme. And then when all the paint is dry and I've given everything a final satin coat of varnish, I'll make a start on the decals. After that I'll put in the gun sight. I could have done it earlier, but I do have a history of breaking tiny pieces off. When it's dry, I'll paint it and the panel in front in black. So now the bit I've been putting off, the undercarriage. We start by placing this lower gear member onto the keel piece. It comes flat, so you have to gently bend it to the correct angle. Refer to the instructions for this. For the remaining cross pieces, I found it easiest to put them together first and then let them dry. And while all that's setting, I can take the masks off the canopy. Now be really careful with this. I just like to pick the very corner with the tip of the blade, but always pulling away from the plastic. Back to the gear, and the cross pieces can go onto that keel piece now. When it's correct, the top and bottom arms are parallel and all the mountings are in line. Then the gear legs themselves can go on. There are 3 mounting points that need to match up on each main leg. As you can see, it didn't work out like that for me, but the assembly looks okay and it's sturdy enough, so I'm leaving it alone. Then the gear assembly goes into the bay. You can see I've been busy weathering in the downtime. The keel slots into place and the gear legs connect with those pegs, the ones we attached the chains to on the bulkhead earlier. And when you're happy with all of that, you can attach the gear doors and then this rear fairing. I'll weather that as well in a minute. The tail wheel slots easily into place, easily as anything fortunately. Then when the gear has set properly, you can add the wheels, making sure the flat spot is in the right place. And while those are drying, you can add the pitot tube to the underside of the wing. And now back to the propeller for a moment, and I'll add a little bit of aluminium paint to the leading edges of the blades first, and then let those dry. When the wheels are secure, you can add the radio mask onto the spine and fix the windshield. I used a tiny drop of ultra thin cement for this, as the fit is extremely good. Now the open canopy doesn't sit naturally, so I've used a dab of super glue and I'm pressing the part down into place. That's a real pity they didn't supply 2 versions of the canopy as they do in their Hurricanes. The propeller now gets a final black coat over the blades, and when that's dry there are decals that go on, technical stencils and the manufacturer's badge. And then I paint in the tips.
white as an undercoat and yellow on top. Finally, I'll just scuff the leading edge of the prop blades with sandpaper to reveal bits of the aluminium underneath. The propeller goes into place and my Wildcat is complete. Yes, it's a lovely kit of the Wildcat, or here the Martlet, and most of the time the fit is good and the parts seem crisp and require very little attention. The undercarriage is really fiddly. There really must be a better design solution for this. It is a pity there's no wing fold option, as it was such an integral part of the design of the Wildcat. The cockpit detail is good, and with the photo etch and decals is excellent. Would I buy this again over the Airfix? Well, for the interior detail, absolutely. For ease of construction and the wing fold option, then no, I wouldn't.
So there we go then, the Arma Hobby FM-2 Wildcat. Now, if you've enjoyed the show, and hope you have, please do remember to let me know by clicking the thumbs up button, the like button down there. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. All you have to do is click on that small button down there in the bottom right corner. It doesn't cost you anything. It really does help me enormously. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.